Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Retail Tales. Today's conversation is about something that I believe could fundamentally reshape how commerce works, um, or how it has worked, over the last several years, and how is it going to work over the next few years. For decades, retail has been fighting wars over the same real estate, search rankings, app installations, email open rates, paid social media, retail media, shelf space, and obviously store layouts. These are consider them these are different battlegrounds with the same core idea, and the idea is if I can win the moment of discovery, I can win the basket. But when everything started to seem almost settled, the game is changing again. Why? Because the moment of discovery is changing. And it's changing so fast that there is almost no time to prepare for it, right? Because the next front door of commerce may not be a store, may not be your website. It may not be an app, and surely not search, at least in the traditional sense as we know it. So, what it could be? Um, no points for guessing, but it could be an AI agent. An agent that knows what you like, knows what you bought last time. Um, it understands constraints like, budget and timing, understands the context of your current shopping trip, and can actually make a decision. And it's not just going to suggest, it's not just going to recommend, it will not just rank products, but it will decide and transact on your behalf. And that is not theoretical anymore. In fact, at NRF earlier this year, Google showed what it looks like when shopping happens inside the Gemini app, where the customer can discover and buy without ever visiting a retailer's website, with partnerships that include major retailers and commerce platforms. And in the same orbit, Google also introduced Universal Commerce Protocol, or UCP, which is an open standard to make those interactions work across the shopping journey, from discovery to checkout to even post-purchase. And now, just take a pause and think. Think about what that implies. Let me help you. If shopping starts inside an agent and not inside your ecosystem as a retailer, think about what it does to discovery. Discovery becomes mediated. The funnel becomes compressed. The browse behavior becomes optional. And the new question for retailers becomes brutally simple. And the question is, how do I stay discoverable? How do I stay trusted? And how do I stay chosen when the customer delegates the shopping journey to a machine? And even before you think, or even before you could think of beginning to answer this brutal question, the second order of questions start to hit. And those questions are, what does product data need to look like for an agent to understand it? What does interoperability mean? When agents have to communicate with merchants, with payment rails, and with customer service systems. And what happens to the role of brands, and especially consumer product companies, right? When the packaging on the shelf is no longer the moment of persuasion. And maybe the biggest of all, what should agents be allowed to do, both generally speaking and in your specific ecosystem? Because see, one thing's for sure, once you move from answering questions to, say, taking actions, you're no longer just designing a better interface. You're pretty much designing a new trust model for commerce. And that is the conversation we're having today. The conversation around the new front door of commerce. And I want you to listen very intently, very closely, because I genuinely believe we are in the early innings of a shift that will make traditional search-based shopping feel, how do I say it, archaic, right? So I've got the perfect guest today on the podcast. I've got someone who's as much in the front seat for this shift for several of his clients as I am for several of mine, and we have quite a few of them even overlapping between the two of us. So when I was conceptualizing this whole episode, I could not think of a better guest for this conversation other than Kapil Dabi. Kapil is the America's lead for retail AI at Google, where he basically works at the intersection of retail, AI, cloud, data, and obviously future of commerce. His career, and we'll hear from him, but his career has given him a broader view of the industry, from across transformation, commerce, retail operations, and now some of the most advanced AI work happening in the market. He has been deeply focused on the evolution of agentic commerce and what this means for retailers, what this means for consumer product companies, what this means for brands and the overall ecosystem around him. Right? And my goal today is to have an open conversation with Kapil and try to separate the signal from the noise for all of you. And at the same time, explore his perspectives on what retail and consumer product leaders should actually be paying attention to. So, Kapil, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the Retail Tales. It's an absolute pleasure to be bringing your thoughts to my listeners and viewers.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for inviting me. It's such a big pleasure to come and talk about this important topic, especially across retail. I do not believe that there is not even a single conversation where we don't talk about the word agentic commerce. So it's a very, very opportune topic, and I am super excited to talk about this. And so again, thank you for such a wonderful opportunity.
Pleasure is mine, Kapil. And we'll get into the agentic commerce conversation. But before we get into the topic itself, I want to start with your own journey. One of the reasons I was excited to have you on the show is that your perspective seems to come from multiple vantage points. You've seen retail transformation, you've seen commerce literally evolve over the years, and now you're looking at AI from inside Google, where obviously there's a lot of foundational technology and ecosystem thinking. That's all that is being shaped. So to start, I wanna hear about your story. Can you walk us through your professional journey and some of the most pivotal moments that shaped how you think about retail, how you think about AI, and maybe even future of commerce?
Thank you so much. Again, my journey, I've been in and out retail person. That's what excites me the most. But basically, I started my career with a small software company, which is called Sterling Commerce. So Sterling Commerce, if you know, is the foundation for pretty much backbone of every order management company in the world. Every top retailer, whether it's Walmart, Target, they're using Sterling Commerce. And this was the launch of almost in the early 2000s when the e-commerce was booming and, people were trying to build buy online, pick up in store, shipment from store. The whole idea was that you need to have an order orchestration capability. You need to have end-to-end interoperability. And that was the launch. I was one of the few founding members of the professional services, um, you know, department, or for lack of a better word, the service which we were providing at Sterling Commerce, which got later acquired by IBM, and we became part of IBM's broader smarter commerce portfolio. So I have actually seen commerce, as we build around some of these technologies in the platform. I became an associate partner leading the business transformations for basically large-scale omni-channel retailers, right from the commerce to the marketing to all the way to last mile delivery operations. So I had the luxury of basically working with large retailers, whether it was Best Buy, whether it's Walmart, or whether it's Target. I had the pleasure of working with most of the retailers. And then also, post IBM, I left and moved from business consulting, I actually moved into the sales and business development side of the world. I joined Infosys for a brief period of time and ran their Atlantic, or the East Coast retail business. So fundamentally, as you can see, I started my journey from services all the way to sales and business development, moved to Accenture, became an MD, moved to partner at EY. So, just like yourself, led their digital transformation practices in both Accenture and EY. And then again, focus was retail and consumer goods. So the passion has always been about retail, helping them, from their transformation perspective. So from digital channels all the way to, the rise of data and AI and cloud. Um, and then from cloud to basically, now we're talking about AI. And post EY, actually, I joined one of my clients, Signet Jewelers. I was the chief digital officer for Signet Jewelers, and built their digital commerce and connected commerce portfolio of capabilities, ran product management, product engineering, also the P&L responsibility. So fundamentally, what I'm saying, I've been on both sides of the table. I was in the consultant, I was a practitioner and operator, and then Google knocked on the doors and then said, "Hey, you're actually looking for somebody to lead the industry, retail industry for Google Cloud." And the goal of my role here is that I'm not part of the sales team. I actually run the strategy. I run industry sales. I run some of the go-to-market capabilities, and that's what gives me the vantage point of like understanding the business and then ensuring that how can technology play a role to support that business. So
Mm,
essentially, the goal is every time I talk to a retailer, my lens is like, how can I make you successful? Yesterday it was data and cloud. Now today is data and AI. And
mm.
now where we go, we don't know. The speed at how AI is evolving. So focus has always been to ensure that how we can help retailers achieve their overall business strategy. And AI can just be a tool. AI can be the new fabric. AI can be the new infrastructure across the enterprise. So that's fundamentally, my passion and my goal.
Love it. See, I told you guys, multiple and varied vantage points that Kapil brings to the table. So, Kapil, let's thank you for that, by the way. But I knew about Ernst and Young. I knew about IBM. I did not know about the. I actually knew about Infosys, but I did not know about your chief digital officer role at Signet Jewelers. Um, it always brings up something that you didn't know, which I'm super thrilled about. Couple, let's talk about agentic commerce, but let's the phrase agentic commerce itself is starting to show up more often now. But I get a sense that different people mean different things when they use it. Some people think of agentic commerce as smarter chatbot. Some think of it as a conversational shopping layer. Some think of it, it is just better search for better recommendations. But my sense is that agentic commerce is something more profound than all of that combined. It is not just about answering a customer's question. It is about understanding the intent and the context behind that shopping journey. It is about evaluating those available options and making decisions. And then it's also about taking action on behalf of the customer, right? But that's how I think about it. How do you define agentic commerce, and how is it different from, say, chatbots or traditional search or product recommendations or even today's generative AI shopping assistants?
Yeah, it's and great points, Sarb, as you mentioned, and I think it's a collection of all and more, right? At the end of the day, so when I think about agentic commerce fundamentally is it's think of a personal concierge to yourself. Okay, so for anybody when they interact with a retailer, okay, whether it's on the website or social media or whether it's an app, think about having your own personal concierge on the other side of the retail. So when you think about a personal concierge, they know everything about you. Okay, which means that when you're typing a query, you know, and you're basically looking for certain things, they're able to decipher the context of that query. If you say I'm looking for like a golf T-shirt, um, and this is my preferred brand, and then also I'm looking for stretchable material. I'm just making.
Sure. Yeah.
And there's a lot of context which the person is actually given in that query, and the intent behind that context is something with the personal conscious or AI shopping system will be able to understand. So it's both about context, intent, and then anticipating what exactly are you looking from a product discoverability perspective. So that's just one element. I think fundamental shift which is happening from an AI chatbot to a personal concierge or an AI shopping assistant is the second piece, which is basically think about it and also an advisory. What do you expect from your concierge? They should be able to know everything about you. What have you purchased in the past? They should be able to um, identify what couples' likings are, dislikings are, which
Mm,
brands does he like, right? What have we bought in the past? So fundamentally, an advisory role you play. My budget is $500. Can you compare these two products? So you can have budgetary needs. You can have like your own constraints. What are the key differences between the qualities of these two apparels, right? Um, and so fundamentally, the goal is you are moving away from the core product discovery, which was the chatbot journey, to a personal concierge. So you first of all, you're anticipating the needs on the base and the context. Second, you are actually guiding them from an advisory perspective. And the last most important thing in retail is can you actually do checkout on your behalf, right? So the
sure.
whole idea is that can you do the autonomous tasks like checkouts on your behalf? So when you think about this journey, one of the fundamental things during the advisory phase is personalization.
Mm,
Okay. So if you're a loyal member, you should be able to identify promotional elements. Or if you're a loyal member, you should be able to actually say, hey, you bought these things, here is some recommendations. Cross-sell, upsell is all basically designed for a segment of one versus like a cohort of people. So they all should know me. So fundamentally, that is what an agentic experience looks like, an end-to-end product discovery, which is inspirational, and then advisory capabilities all the way to autonomous capabilities, which actually helps you with the checkout. So that's fundamentally the big difference between like a simple chatbot or product discovery, which is on steroids.
yeah.
Uh, but it's understanding basically your end-to-end consumer journey, understanding you as a person, and then basically identifying your needs, your anticipation, and then helping you with the closure of the sales.
So basically, an ecosystem of capabilities or ecosystem of different partners coming together, not just a retailer. They'll have to kind of bring the best of breed in terms of that they'll have to weave in those capabilities together to make that end-to-end journey come to life when it comes to agent and agentic AI. Love it.
Yeah. Its ecosystem is very critical. Yes. Yeah.
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 Now, looking at from an ecosystem perspective, Kapil, and this is like a technology cycle in itself, right? And every major technology cycle obviously comes with excitement, and retail has definitely seen its own share of shiny object moments with generative AI, with and now obviously agentic AI. There are some incredible demos out there, right? But retail, it's well, operationally speaking, it's absolutely chaotic and complex industry, right? There's so much of signals from everywhere, messy data, legacy systems, fragmented channels, um, inventory challenges, some of the policy related challenges, um, store constraints, the physical space constraints, brand considerations. There are so many things that could go wrong in this whole journey, right? Um, I I understand when retail leaders are skeptical of a change in this entire kind of transformative landscape, and especially tech-driven change. So I want to spend a few minutes on separating what is real from what is still aspirational. When you look at agentic commerce today, what comes across as already real um, versus what is still hype, and what still needs to mature before it becomes mainstream.
Yeah. No, it's a great question, and then I would say that you'll always find some leaders and then laggards, right, and fast followers in the industry. So there's a variety of maturity amongst the retail industry. But what's shifting, as you mentioned, is very, very critical because Agentic commerce is a $3 trillion opportunity according to McKinsey. 1 trillion of that is actually in North America alone. And then also, we're already seeing the rise of the consumer behavior, right? So people are using ChatGPTs, Google AI Mode, Gemini app, and Gemini app is now 900 million active users, and Google AI Mode is almost a billion monthly active users. So we are seeing that shifting sand, like people are using some of these LLM browsers and um, um, some of these apps, right? At the end of the day, from a shopping perspective. So that fundamental shift is happening. The consumer behavior is shifting. I think what is important when we see is it truly an agent which is coming and shopping on behalf of your consumer? The answer is no. Okay, but we're reaching, right, with the launch of Gemini Spark, which is going to be your 24/7 agent, we can also do shopping for you. We also have Open Clause, which is the open source. These are the rise of basically your own personal AI agents, which will actually shop for you. We have not reached there. Okay, where we have the consumer is still activating and then interacting with Gemini app from a shopping perspective, as basically providing that context, um, providing whatever they really need from an advisory perspective. On a retailer side, if you see, that is where I believe we are currently there, where a lot of retailers have launched their own AI shopping agents. And we had the pleasure of working with Macy's when they launched Ask Macy's, or Ulta AI with Ulta Beauty, and Magic Apron with Home Depot. The idea here is people are basically launching agentic experiences on your own surface because they're able to control that experience. They are able to provide that bespoke personalized experience when a consumer actually comes and interacts with them on our own website. So that is real. That's already happening. Most of the people are launching, they're linking it back from product discovery to advisory capabilities, which is like, and all the way to the checkout. So that's sort of real. Um, I think there is still work which needs to be done from a core, I would say, interoperability perspective, or, are we interacting, because you're controlling the ecosystem, your own ecosystem, but are you going beyond the ecosystem? Can I now today launch an agent which can talk to my supplier?
Hmm.
There's A2A capability, which we have the protocol, but I think there is a lot of work which needs to be done from a truly, where the two different companies are retailer working with like a logistics provider, like
Hmm.
real time. If there's an out of stock situation in a store, and an agent within the store talk directly to your distributor and say, please ship some of these things, right? Without even human getting into the loop. That capability is not developed completely, right? We are still working. We have the protocols, but I think, the wider ecosystem still needs to support. Uh, but payment side has evolved. So we have AP2 protocol where, it's very easy where, say, hey, I want to pay for this thing. Your partners like PayPal and Stripe and of course GPay, and you can actually launch APK protocol and you can close the checkout. So there are few capabilities which are mature, few capabilities they're still working on it. Few capabilities I would say is part of the wider ecosystem like A2A where you need two parties to accept. And some of those things are basically in the process. But where you have your own control of the agentic experiences, I think you're seeing a lot of development and a lot of capabilities, and you're seeing a lot of launches of these agentic experiences on retailer surface. As I gave some examples, like with Macy's, Ulta, and
Hmm.
Home Depot.
Great. But I would also say it's like I was saying earlier as well, it's not theoretical. Like you can get started in terms of building those capabilities. Otherwise, you led your response
Yes.
for this question around leaders versus laggards, right? If you don't, and I keep saying that myself, like it's not that you're going to be left behind like a month or 6 months. You're basically going to be 2, 3, 4 flywheel rotations behind, which is where the realization has to happen.
I think the risk is real, which is what I always say, that agentic commerce is here to stay, whether you like it or not. And eventually, the goal is for any retailer. When I was a practitioner, where we used to look is where are your
Mm,
consumers? Where are they shopping? Which channels are they using? So fundamental thing which we're trying to talk here is like your consumers are actually are already shopping in those channels, right? They're
yeah.
using Google AI Mode, Gemini app. So you have to be present, right? They are expecting that kind of experiences. One of the things I talk about is like we have some survey where 76% of consumers prefer to buy from brands where they get bespoke experiences,
100%.
personalized
Yeah.
experience,
Yeah.
right? And that bespoke experience actually can come from that AI shopping agent, which I thought of a personal concierge kind of thing, right? So the whole idea here is you really need to step up your game. The consumers are already demands that kind of experience, and then it is responsibility of the retailer to give that experience in those channels, and then also on your own surface. So I think that's the fundamental shift. And if you keep on waiting, you will be left far behind. So the recommendation always to start on your surface because you have the control. You might already have a chatbot, enhance your chatbot, to basically, give that holistic experience from product discovery all the way to checkout. So, yeah. So you have to start somewhere. You have to
Love
start
it.
fast.
Love it. And speaking of starting somewhere, um, one of the things that I keep coming back to is this future of commerce may depend a lot less on having a beautiful website or a beautiful app,
Yes.
app store or Android, um, and a lot more on whether your products, their prices, the policies, inventory status, availability, and the service promises, right? Whether all these things are going to be understandable by systems, by AI systems. In traditional commerce, bad product data, for example, hurts search ranking and conversion. But in an agentic world, bad or incomplete product data could mean that your products do not even get considered by an agent. So the product data in that sense becomes the currency with
Yes.
which you buy the visibility of your product. And that's a huge shift. And I honestly don't think most retailers are even thinking through, thinking through the implication from this shift yet. So I want to get your perspective on this. What do product data, protocols, and interoperability become? Why do they become so important, so critical in an agentic commerce environment?
No, you started so well, So I'm going to just add on to what you're
Sure. Yeah.
already saying from a perspective. I mean, I call it that your product is the new storefront. Okay, your product catalog is actually the new storefront in AI store. If you do not have the right product catalog, if you don't have the visuals, if you don't have the images, if you don't have the videos, if you don't have the right metadata, your product will not come in the product discovery, as you mentioned. One of the fundamental shift which is happening is we are moving away from keywords to an actual conversation. So we're no longer looking for like a white polo shirt or a blue jacket. You're looking for a whole conversation. And the second big change which is happening is, we're moving away from the links which used to come page after page in every website, right, to an actual answer probably in the first, query itself or second query itself. So we are moving to a very, very mature context and intent driven, conversation. And that is an important element. And that gets driven completely by the AI ready or agent ready product catalog, right? So your first party data is very, very critical. Now, and mainly because I'll give you an example, like my son who uses voice for search all the time. Okay, or my wife actually uses images. If you don't have images, your product is not going to come. So you pretty much have to figure out the maturity of your product catalog. It needs to be AI ready, it needs to be agent ready. One fundamental shift which is happening in the agentic commerce world also is the third party data, which I think often retailers miss. So when you look for an open query on Google AI Mode or and then looking for certain things, that query is also spawning multiple agents in the background. So they might be actually looking for product reviews, which is real, is going to go to Reddit, right? Or it might actually say, hey, can you compare these products? And we'll go for product reviews in a third party, where probably celebrity is using it or an influencer is actually opening that. So these are the third party data points which you don't have the control. But if a customer or a consumer actually puts that thing, I'm looking for only 5-star product reviews for this, the agent is actually going to find that out, which is third-party data. And so it's very, very critical and important that you need to not just ensure, but first party, you also need to ensure your third-party product data and brand data is actually also very, very critical. Now, protocols are here. As you mentioned about the protocol, the goal of protocols is basically to support the ecosystem. And Google has always excelled in ensuring that most of the protocols like UCP or A2A or A2, these are all open standard protocols to support the ecosystem, depending on whoever wants to use it. So the idea of the protocol is, at the end of the day, it's not about the retailer surface, which we are launching these agentic experiences, but to also support the wider retail ecosystem with Google AI Mode and Gemini app for shopping. And we're giving the power back to the brands like the UCP so that they can actually build some of these agentic experiences on those surfaces as well. So that's the fundamental thing, that the catalog is super critical. Catalog or product catalog is the new storefront. I often talk about this thing that the agents do not browse like humans do. Agents match, right? Depending on the context in that query which the person has put. So it's all about matching. You can only match the metadata if your data is actually clean, both first party and third parties. Let me take a pause there, Sarab, and
No, that's
hopefully
brilliant. No, that's brilliant. In fact, it's right on cue, right? Because it's basically about using that currency and how you use that product data currency to stay visible to your customers. I wanna switch gears and talk about something that I've at least once or twice heard you speak about, which is the difference between owning the experience and owning the transaction. I wanna have you hum a few bars on that for the viewers, on what you mean by own the experience versus owning the transaction itself.
Yeah, it's you'll often find that there are some retailers who just wants the transaction, which means as long as the checkout happens, and then they're delivering the product, they're fine with it. And some retailers wants to completely own the end-to-end experience. And you will often see that um, those retailers, and there's a fundamental difference in this is a business model difference, okay, how you make money, okay. This is, so this is a choice which every retailer has made. So let's break this thing a little bit more. But when you think about owning the experience, right, think about it, that full-blown AI personal concierge, okay, where you're helping them with the product discovery also, like so whatever question that you're anticipating the context, the intention, and then basically helping with the discovery. You're actually helping them with the advisory. What's your budget? What color do you like? What's the occasion which you're purchasing it for? Is it for your family member or is it for your kids? So all that advisory capabilities where you can actually have a conversation, that element basically. What about personalization and all those things which often comes into the mix? And then comes the checkout, right? The autonomous piece. That's owning a full blown end to end experience. And most of the people, like you see the experiences like Home Depot has built with Magic Eden, or Walmart's, Sparky experience, or, Macy's, Ask Macy's experience. They're all built to support that end to end customer experience. But then there are some retailers who will say, I don't really want to excel it. Means you'll definitely have your own website. That's perfectly fine. So you're talking about
Sure.
the
Yeah.
agentic commerce side. And they're perfectly fine that somebody just goes and looks for certain things on Gemini app. Okay. And Gemini app is actually doing the product discovery. Gemini app is actually helping them with that, decision making, that advisory questions. As long as when they click, the recommendation is coming for their brand, and then you're basically checking out. Okay. So let's say if you're buying a sports jersey, okay, that doesn't really matter if you're going through the whole discovery decision making process on some of these LLM browsers or Google AI mode, as long as basically the purchase button comes and takes you to that specific website, and then you close the transaction, and that's fine with them. And that's why some of these retailers basically lean heavily upon different kind of um, I would say LLM browsers, right? Because it doesn't really matter as long as the transaction comes back. So that's the fundamental thing, that they're not over investing into the full experience. They want to be present in every, it's I would say whether it's ChatGPT or whether it's Gemini or whether it's Perplexity, they want to be present. And the link there is basically the payment link. So whether it's AP2 protocol they're using, or they're using their, whatever OpenAI's protocol, doesn't really matter. But they want to be present for that last autonomous click, which is basically I'm clicking and
Conversion.
transaction. That's the
Yeah.
fundamental difference, as I've seen with most of the retailers. Like, what do they want to do between owning the transaction and owning I would say, the experience?
And I'm guessing this is also dependent on the category that the retailer is in. If you're luxury, or not luxury, maybe beauty and fashion, you would want to own that entire experience. But if you are, say, grocery, and I'm not generalizing it for one retailer versus the other, but if you're in grocery, it's more transactional sort of a thing, and you'd probably more interested in transaction. Is that a fair kind of assumption?
It means, to some extent, yes, and it is a choice of the retailer. Like, we are seeing a lot of experiences. People want to build in grocery to, like, recipe planning, meal planning, multimodal capabilities where you can scan the refrigerator and it'll tell you what can I make from the
Hmm.
ingredients, which is very, very unique to grocery. I think the question really is that, are you in a category where, maybe you're one of the only, retailer in that category. Okay, there's
Hmm.
certain things. So specialty retailer is one of those retailers where, they can own the experience, or they pretty much want to do a transaction. But yes, most of the time, the category where you have, I would say, standardized, like you're purchasing a milk, you can get the milk from anywhere as long as you own the transaction for the milk,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So, yes. So yes, to some extent, directionally that that sense is correct. But again, I've seen it's the decision of a specific retailer how they want.
And when you talk about, the own the experience, or maybe even owning the transaction, one of the biggest things that keep coming back is this whole notion of trust. Um, Trust, at least in my opinion, should be front and center of every agent to every agentic conversation. But somehow, at least in the conversations that I've had on the topic with multiple retailers now so far, this becomes one of the least, or one of the topics that gets talked about at the last in the overall conversation. And and I I cannot pinpoint why that happens. But once agents move from answering questions to taking actions, in my opinion, trust becomes a much bigger issue. So let me ask you this: what should agents be allowed to do in commerce, and where should humans remain in the loop?
Yeah, and it's again, I would say it's not a generic answer, because it depends upon what the retailer really wants to do, right?
Mm,
And how do they want to control that experience? I think trust is a very, very critical part. And that's why, some of the protocols when we launched, AP2 was the one of the protocols which we launched almost last year, right? Because payment is a very critical part. And in an agent, the two things which matters the most, accountability and transparency, right? So, so that's an important element, like, in an agentic commerce, when you think about the personalized experience, bespoke experience, product catalog data, pricing, promote, all that good stuff. But one of the key, most important things is security and transparency, right? Because um, if I'm giving my agent, or at Google AI mode, I can do price stacking and say, if this t-shirt falls below $100, just purchase it, right? On the retailer side, they need to validate that, right? It is very critical that, suddenly a rogue agent doesn't comes and buys 100 of these things, right? Or if, you're not giving authorization for $50,000, from a purchase perspective. So I think the accountability, transparency, trust element, identifying whether it's a rogue agent versus identifying that it's a real agent, those things are super critical. So from a Google perspective and Google Cloud perspective, especially when we talk about agentic commerce, building these shopping agents, the security is a very, very critical part of our conversation with our clients beyond the overall experience which we have been talking. The other thing that we also talk beyond the security is also basically, the whole orchestration piece. So we also talk about, today we are only talking about these fit for purpose or purpose built single agents. Okay. Tomorrow we're going to talk about a whole workflow where we will have these agents going to go in and out and we have to orchestrate this. So the second big thing we also talk about is a platform approach where you'll have first party agents, your own agents, and third party agents all working together to actually secure that workflow. So in that also security is super critical. Just imagine it a ServiceNow agent or a Salesforce agent or a third party, supplier agent which wants to connect. How do you ensure that security is maintained between all of them from a compliance and governance perspective? So when we think about the platform, that's what we think about. And the security is sort of built into it from an orchestration layer perspective. So those are very, very two critical components that we do talk. It's super critical that if they don't talk, then it's our responsibility that
to
we
bring it up, yes,
to
and make
educate
it
them
front and center.
about some of these things.
Yeah, no, I love it. Um, so far, it's always been, help me understand the strategic value proposition of agentic commerce, or help me how engineering is going to come true and bring it to life. Um, the controls, the risks, the trust aspect of it is always the third topic. And I tell my clients, look, start there, because ultimate goal is to be the trusted uh, retailer of choice for your customers and continue being there, whether they are loyal to or not. The opportunity cost of losing a customer is very
Yeah,
high. Um,
I'll tell you something. I wanted to add to something,
yeah.
Sarma. Back in the days, we used to talk about shadow IT, right? It's just like
Mm,
everybody has their own version of data analytics dashboards and running. So shadow IT used to be rampant. This is the era when the shift is up to shadow agents because
mm.
everybody has an agent. They can buy a small software and that agent will be running something else. And then, marketing will have their own creative agents, supply chain will have their own dashboards, and agents running on that data. So the whole idea is that eventually in the future, all these agents are running and have access to the data. And it is very, very critical that security plays a big role. You'll also have third party agents, right? In this scenario, you might have actually not every agent is running on your tenant. They might actually, running on the vendor agent or a supplier agent. So it's critical that, as you mentioned, security becomes an important play in every agentic commerce conversation or agentic AI conversation. So I just wanted to add that the rise of shadow agents is actually quite prominent right now.
And shadow agents, both with good intent and bad, right? Because fraudulent transactions have been a huge issue for e-commerce. We have not seen it with agentic commerce yet, but that's just a matter of time, because there will be fraudulence in those agents being transacting wrongfully on behalf of customers as well. So how do you protect that should be the front and center topic of all these conversations. But Kapil, we've been talking about retail quite a lot during this conversation. I want to touch upon a thread, which is pretty much the implications of agentic commerce for consumer product companies and brands.
Yeah, brands.
For the most part, retailers, I think, are a little bit ahead of consumer product companies when it comes to agentic commerce implications. Thinking about what needs to be done, what
Yeah.
could they do right now versus what could wait, in terms of funding, in terms of customer engagement, in terms of even completing that end-to-end transaction or experience that we were talking about a few minutes ago. While there may be a little bit of truth in that, brands and consumer product companies are going to get just as impacted, right? If an AI agent is helping customer decide what to buy,
Yes.
brands will have to influence that decision differently. Traditional levers like packaging that I was talking about earlier, or maybe even shelf placement. These things, like paid search, product content, all these things will continue to to be there, but all of these will need to evolve from where they currently are. And in all of this, the underlying brand questions are, how do you stay visible? How do you stay trusted? And then, like was in the retail context as well, the questions was, how do you stay preferred when an AI agent is filtering choices for the customer? So I want to know from you, when you speak with leaders of these brands or of these consumer product companies, how do you explain the agentic commerce, what it could mean for them?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. I think for brands, there are two big opportunities. One, I think, is we don't talk often is, if they really want to go direct to consumer, and a lot of brands do. Okay? And it makes them go direct to consumer in an extremely fast way. Because earlier they have to create a brand, the website and all that stuff. Now basically you can start selling via agentic commerce, and you can actually just underpin the retailers and not give them the cut. But it's a choice. What I'm saying is it's another opportunity which brands really need and can actually utilize the rise of agentic commerce, because people are already looking. Should I drink Pepsi or Coca-Cola, right? Or which flavor is better for me? Or can you recommend something because of the lemon flavored, new soda which has been launched? That the idea is that people are interacting with, with Gemini and Google AI more and asking these questions, and brands actually can come because they're looking for that, and basically launch some of these channels and start selling. That's one opportunity.
Can I ask you? Can I ask you
Yes.
something on the first opportunity, though? Sorry to interrupt you. But that's just the discoverability part.
You can do checkout.
Essentially, yeah, fair enough. But what about fulfillment? Because consumer product organizations have not built that muscle in the
Correct.
past,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
So how does that work? And I
Yeah.
don't mean to derail you from the
No,
answer,
no,
but
no.
if you can hum a few bars.
So when you think about launching a new completely direct to consumer strategy, you will also think about fulfillment. So if you're not saying just sell it, but if you are if you are at least thinking about going direct to consumer, I think the biggest challenge was not always fulfillment side, because you have DCs or you can outsource the fulfillment to a 3PL. I think the goal was always like, can I build that experience like the retailers are doing?
Sure.
What you're saying is you don't have to build that experience, because the agent commerce is actually taking over that experience part and directly going to the checkout world. So yes, if you are going and you're serious, you have to focus on the fulfillment aspect as well. I think the bigger thing is what you were mentioning, that in the world of agentic commerce, the does your brands basically come in from a discoverability perspective? Like,
Mm,
what consumers are looking for it. So I have seen, again, it is, as I mentioned, agents do not browse like humans do. They will match. So eventually it boils down to, the focus from a brand perspective, they're not focused as much on their, because they don't have a catalog, but the content which they put forward from a marketing perspective, like the third party content which somebody is putting on their behalf, the marketing content you're putting from an educational perspective. Um, if somebody is looking for, like, yesterday I was out for, like, a stain remover, spray. And and I was doing Google AI mode, and I was seeing what pops up, and that's what I was going with. So if you do not have, that marketing content out, or if I'm looking for how to videos, how to do videos, if they are not there, or if you are in a category which is luxury category and you do not have somebody on YouTube who is not basically open the packaging,
mm,
you don't have blog posts which says, hey, here's the top 10, best shows for hiking, so the whole idea here is there is a lot more intentional third party content which you need to focus upon from a creation perspective, and which actually pops up in these things, because you don't have the traditional product catalog which you typically a retailer would have. So I think that's one area which we are seeing that a lot of brands are making investments, from a content perspective, third party content perspective, which helps you with the discovery. And I'm not even talking about the paid search and other things.
yeah,
Basically, I'm
yeah,
purely from an agentic commerce perspective.
yeah.
So
That's no, that's great. Um, Honestly, and if you talk to my guests who I've had on the podcast, most of them are going to vouch for the fact that sometimes I can get greedy in continuing great conversations, similar to the one that we are currently having. I can continue to go on and on, but I also want to be respectful of your time, Kapil. Um, to close out our conversation today, I want to basically ask you sort of a practical question, but it would be like 2-year outlook sort of a thing. Um, Retailers are hearing a lot about AI. They're trying to decide what to invest in now, what to test, what to wait on, and what not to get distracted by. And you said it earlier, this is agentic commerce in particular is here to stay. But say we have this conversation again in 2 years from now. What do you think is going to feel normal in commerce that still feels futuristic today?
Yeah. And that question often gets asked, right? Um, I think I'll give you two, and this is purely Kapil's opinion, not probably Google's opinion here. Okay. Means I truly feel that if you look forward, we will be so it'll be the rise of the multi-agent orchestration. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Whether any workflow, whether we're talking about the agentic commerce side or whether we're talking the the enterprise agents within the four walls of the enterprise. So any complex workflow like supply chain or new product innovation or pricing. A lot of these things are very complex workflows, and all those workflows will be orchestrated, simply by agents, and the human in the loop will come to just approve yes and no. Okay. So think about your entire supply chain, 20 agents, which is running this from the transporting to assortment to replenishment to, talking to the manufacturing and so on and so forth. But think about your procurement cycle where, they want to build something, the creative agent puts together RFQ, sends it, the negotiation happens with the supplier, everything gets taken care, and then human in the end. I think that'll happen from a shopping perspective. I think everyone will have an agent. Okay. You will not even go to Gemini. You will actually go to, my agent, which does everything on my behalf. So I
And
think that,
built in Gemini or Google Enterprise.
yeah, yeah. So, but what I'm saying is the rise of, your own agent is going to happen. Like, like Spark, it's moving towards that direction, right? Um, so that those two things will definitely happen. The third thing I would say is the what I call the rise of agentic hardware. We don't talk about physical AI a lot,
Mm.
especially in retail, but definitely in warehouses, manufacturing. Some of the retailers who have this thing, and I call it the rise of agentic hardware mainly because today we do have physical AI. We do have robots that can basically do exactly what you program them to do. They can move things around. They can pick, pack, and ship. But when I call agentic hardware, it's about like it's the same way today is agentic software, right? Or agentic like the agents. They understand the context, then they react based on that context, even if they're not trained to do that. So it's the same way. If something falls down while they're picking and packing, typically they're saying, "Oh, there will be another agent will pick that stuff." But
Mm.
if think about a human, what will he do? He'll basically bend and just pick it up
Yeah.
and then put it back, right? So that concept of agentic hardware is like we will have the same context, same intention, same anticipation, same kind of autonomous activities today, what we do and experience from talking and interacting with an actual agent today. So I think that's going to probably happen probably 2 years down the line as well. So that's
That's
what my perception is. But
No,
let's
that's great. The physical AI aspect of it is refreshing to hear and learn about because you're right. I mean, it's not just what is facing your customer or what you can do from an experiential perspective, but also what you can do, behind the scenes to continue to drive that experience in the front end. Couple, this has been a fascinating conversation. What I'd love for the viewers to take away is that agentic commerce is not just another interface. It is realistically a new layer, a new channel, uh, almost like not almost, but a new way of commerce. And it changes how customers discover products, how retailers compete, how brands remain visible, and how the entire ecosystem that we were talking about, how that connects. Um, all the retail enthusiasts and leaders listening to this conversation know that the front door of commerce has moved several times before, from stores to websites, from websites to apps, then to marketplaces, and from marketplaces to social and search. But this next shift feels different. And that is because it is different. Because that front door may not be a destination at all. It may be an intelligent agent acting on behalf of the customer, acting on behalf of the retailer, or maybe the brand, or even, another merchant. And that means the winners will not just be companies with the best website or the biggest assortment, for that matter. They may be the companies with the best data, with the clearest trust model, the strongest interoperability, and the ability to show up wherever intent is being expressed. Kapil, thank you again for joining. Thank you for being on the Retail Tales and sharing your perspective.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I really enjoyed the conversation, Saurav.
And to all the viewers, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the Retail Tales on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And if you are interested in having more such conversations at the intersection of retail and AI, hit me up on LinkedIn. But whatever you do, don't stop learning. And in order to keep learning a thing or two about retail AI, you know what to do. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay curious.